Yeah. Good morning, everyone joining us live. We appreciate it as always, and good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are watching the recordings, whether on Facebook or YouTube. We are grateful. This is My Empowered Political Life. As always, if you believe in what we're doing, please smash that like button, subscribe, share. It helps us get the word out. If you believe it, if you want other people to see this, there are a few simple things you can do that help us, and we are really grateful for all of it, for all the views, all the watches. Thank you so much. All the comments, the emails we're getting, the messages we're getting. It's great. It's very encouraging. Thank you. So this is our week in review. It is April 5th. 2025, and we have a doozy today. So we are going to have to kind of rapid fire through some of this. It's been a very busy, big week. We're going to give you an update on China's military aggression around Taiwan, the attacks on the law firms, and the continued fallout from the tariffs. So there's a lot happening right now, and let's see what we can get through today in a timely manner. So we'll start with China's military aggression. You may recall earlier this week, we discussed the recent exercises by the Chinese military and the signs that all sides are preparing for war. China, Taiwan, even Japan, Philippines, some indications from the United States, and it's a little bit troubling, but at the same time, I bring you all this so you can prepare, not be terrified or scared. That doesn't help, but prepare you and your family and your community in case this happens. And a couple days after our video on this subject, so on April 2nd, China held a new and more dangerous military exercise. They held an actual simulated invasion of Taiwan. This involved a simulated blockade, and by simulated, I do not mean in the computer. I mean in real life with real ships and people and planes and weapons, not in the computer. A simulated blockade. They held simulated airstrikes, simulated beach landings, and live fire exercises inside Taiwan's air defense zone. If you're not familiar with the term live fire, that means, yes, what it sounds like, real bullets, real missiles, real bombs being used, and it was all inside Taiwan's air defense zone. I was able to find this diagram of what the Chinese military, or otherwise known as the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, did a few days ago around Taiwan. And as you can see, so that dotted line around Taiwan is Taiwan's territorial waters, and all those little arrows are the Chinese units that were involved. You can see they remain just barely outside Taiwan's territorial waters. That solid line outside is Taiwan's recognized air defense zone, where Taiwan reserves the right to shoot at you. And you see they were inside that zone fire doing live fire. I do think, again, as I said earlier this week, they're trying to goad Taiwan into making a mistake and firing the first shot because that will give them an excuse. At the same time, this is extremely provocative, extremely dangerous. If you think it's dangerous for the PLA to be doing live fire that close around the island of Taiwan, you would be right. It is very threatening and dangerous. And Taiwan has shown a lot of restraint. They are not going to fire the first shot, but they are going to defend themselves. They are armed to the teeth, and their people have made it clear they're willing to fight to the death to defend their island. Now, again, a exercise like this is a dress rehearsal for a full-scale invasion. Now, for you theater geeks out there, I'm an old theater geek myself. When do you hold the dress rehearsal? Right before the live show. And the Chinese just held their dress rehearsal, so I will let you surmise what that might mean. Things appear to be imminent at this point. Now, let's get on the attacks on the law firms. We've had multiple shows over the last few weeks where we discussed the administration's attacks on law firms, and we can link to those shows, but they are attempting to put these law firms out of business in retaliation simply for protected speech. And now we talked about two law firms have capitulated. Unfortunately, a third firm has capitulated. This is Milbank LLP. This one is especially a gut punch for those of us in the legal profession. This is Neil Katyal's, he's a partner in this firm. Neil Katyal was Joe Biden's Solicitor General. So to see Milbank LLP capitulate is especially disheartening. Now, I have no idea whether Neil had any say in this or what say he had, but this one is disheartening, and they paid effectively a $100 million bribe to the administration to get off of their enemies list. So a third firm has capitulated. Still, most firms are fighting. Now, you remember we specifically discussed earlier the firm of Paul Weiss, which was the first to capitulate. And I wanted to show you their little, their sign on their building here. You'll see, and this is important here, the full name of the firm is Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison. Now, Rifkind refers to Judge Rifkind, who was one of the founding members of Paul Weiss, as well as a highly respected and revered federal judge back in the day. Now, Judge Rifkind, he wrote what was called the Statement of Principles in 1963 that were supposed to be the guiding values of the firm, Paul Weiss. So the chairman of the firm, Brad Karp, he said in a memo to the firm that they were capitulating to the administration consistent with Judge Rifkin's Statement of Principles. And now Judge Rifkin's granddaughters have taken great exception to this, and they wrote a scathing letter to Brad Karp, essentially asking him not to invoke their grandfather's name. I want to quote from their letter and show you pieces of their letter because I admit, as an attorney who got into the law because I believe in the work, I believe in the Constitution, I believe in justice, I believe in the rule of law. That's why I got into this. This one brings a tear to my eye. This one gives me the feels. So from Judge Rifkin's granddaughters, as two of the four granddaughters of Judge Simon Rifkin, both of us practicing lawyers, we have been following the Trump administration's attack on Paul Weiss and the legal profession closely. Amid our heartbreak about the assault on the rule of law in our country and the executive order targeting Paul Weiss, you, Mr. Karp, traveled to Washington to surrender before you had even begun to fight. To support your agreement with the administration, you cited in a memorandum to our firm our grandfather's 1963 Statement of Principles to support your decision. We are utterly stunned. His granddaughters went on to say, when you met with the president, you were first and foremost an officer of the court, not a CEO of a large commercial enterprise with a problem you wanted to put behind you. Nothing short of the integrity of the entire legal system is at stake. They are making the point here, these brave women, they are making the point that as an attorney, your fiduciary duty is not to the company, not to the shareholders, not to the owners. Your fiduciary duty is to the law and the Constitution and your clients. In fact, you take an oath to that effect. And law firms are supposed to be above this sort of thing. They went on to say, it is impossible to reconcile your pact with the administration made during a week in which attacks on law firms and the judicial system were only increasing, including violent calls for the impeachment of a federal judge, a position our grandfather held before he came to Paul Weiss, with this clear directive in the Statement of Principles to privilege the profession he loved and the country he venerated. It is plain to us, as it would have been to our grandfather, that taking action to stay off an enemy's list does not advance the rule of law as embodied in the Statement of Principles. It undercuts it and emboldens those who seek to dismantle it. As you face other decisions going forward, unless you prioritize your responsibilities both to our profession and your country and redevelop muscle and determination to protect the prizes of our civilization, we request that you cease invoking our grandfather's name to justify your actions. So Judge Rifkin's granddaughters, like me, got into the law because they believe in the work. They believe in justice and the rule of law and the Constitution and the country. And they are pissed. And they have said what every other lawyer like me is thinking out there right now. George Conway, the longtime Republican operative conservative lawyer, now a legal commentator, formerly married to Kellyanne Conway, one of Donald Trump's top advisors. He read this letter. I saw this letter. I saw him in tears reading this letter. I was the same way. This is a fight for democracy, for the rule of law, and some people just don't give a shit, and that makes me angry. Again, he is saying what most of the legal profession is thinking right now. All right, let's continue to talk about the fallout from the tariffs. Yesterday, we touched on it, and we have not yet discussed the tariffs in detail But we did start discussing the fallout on Monday, and I will tease this again later. On Monday morning, we are actually going to discuss the tariffs in detail. I'm working on that right now, making sure all my research is correct on that. But Monday morning, we're going to discuss the tariffs in detail. The Europeans are already breaking away from us economically and militarily. Canada is breaking away in a big way. And we have seen the effective end of the post-war order and 80 years of innovation and prosperity that was centered around the United States as the hub. So let's be clear about tariffs. Again, we're going to talk about tariffs in more detail Monday. Tariffs, these tariffs in particular, are the largest peacetime tax hike in American history. Tariffs are not taxes on foreign countries. They're just not. They're just not. Tariffs are taxes on American companies. They will increase the costs of the products you buy, and they will result in fewer available goods to buy. This is not by accident. That is what tariffs are supposed to do. That is how they are designed. They are designed to create scarcity and increase costs. Literally, that's how they work. If you want the supposed benefits of tariffs, you have to increase costs and have fewer goods in order to onshore the production, which means this will be higher prices. And again, on Monday, we're going to talk about why I don't think this is going to remotely work in this case. The best estimates I've seen are that these tariffs are going to cost the average American family over $3,500 per year. Now, additional fallout just as of today and yesterday, last couple of days, the Dow Jones is down 10% in 2 days. The S&P is down 11%. NASDAQ is down 12%. If that sounds like a lot, that's a lot. This is the largest market crash since March of 2020. I don't know if you remember what happened in March of 2020. I do. It was when COVID started to hit and we all started to realize what was really happening. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for a suspension of all French investment in the United States. He has called the tariffs brutal and dishonest. And Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, here's a very choice quote from him that just came out. Canada must be looking elsewhere to expand our trade, to build our economy, and to protect our sovereignty. Canada is ready to take a leadership role in building a coalition of like-minded countries who share our values. To be clear, he's saying the United States is no longer one of those countries. We believe in international cooperation. We believe in the free and open exchange of goods, services, and ideas. And if the United States no longer wants to lead, Canada will. From The Economist, their headline, President Trump's mindless tariffs will cause economic havoc. And The Economist really is one of the premier economics magazines in the world. This is the graphic they used, showing our president sawing off the United States from the rest of the world, isolating us from the rest of the world. And again, on Monday, we're going to talk about why this really is now isolating us from the rest of the rest of the world is going to go on trading and developing without us. They're going to move around us now. They're not going to move with us. So from the editorial board of The Economist, it's hard to know which is more unsettling, that the leader of the free world could spout complete drivel about its most successful and admired economy, or the fact that on April 2nd, spurred on by his delusions, Donald Trump announced the biggest break in America's trade policy in over a century and committed to the most profound, harmful, and unnecessary economic error in the modern era. From the Financial Times, one of the greatest acts of self-harm in American history, they will wreak untold damage on households, businesses, and financial markets across the world, upending a global economic order that America benefited from and helped to create. So again, join us Monday morning. We're going to discuss tariffs in much more detail. We're going to discuss what tariffs are and how they work, the legal authority for these specific tariffs, and are they legal? Are they not? Details about these tariffs and the effect they're going to have on their lives, and in doors and quarters, the implications of the tariffs we need to consider. A lot of people are asking me if these are so dumb, if they're such a horrible idea, if it's going to cause so much damage, why is Trump doing it? I have my suspicions. We're going to talk about that in doors and corners on Monday. Please smash that like button, subscribe, share with your friends, anyone who you think would benefit from this. Thank you so much. We are grateful. Now let's get on to today's doors and corners. Like detectives walking into a dangerous room, we're going to look around the corners and behind the doors and see if we can see what's coming. There is a through line for all this. There's a through line from the deportations without due process. Not deep. I should be calling them renditions. They are not deportations. They are extra legal renditions, to the attacks on law firms, to the tariffs opposed against all reason and against all opposition. And that through line is simply the consolidation of power in one man. We are looking at one man trying to impose his will, no matter how illegal or unpopular or unfounded or how bad the consequences might be. This is simply the consolidation of power in one man. That explains the through line through all of this. Now, I wanted to talk about an implication that I don't see talked about a lot, but this is going to be huge for the United States in a bad way. When such power is consolidated in one man, consider, where are the world's best and brightest now going to take their talents? For the last 80 years, the world's best and brightest have been coming to the United States to bring their talents here, to help build and innovate and create value. Now think, will they want to go to a country where they can be snatched off the streets with no due process and sent to El Salvador? Probably not. Will they want to go to a country where they can't get research funding because Doge has cut it? Probably not. Will they want to go to a country where prices are high and goods are scarce because of the tariffs? Probably not. We are making ourselves radioactive to the best and brightest people in the world. Now, I want to talk about something that's going to be uncomfortable, especially for a lot of my more progressive friends. But it's a discussion that has to be had. And we'll talk about this more in the coming weeks, months, years. But let's seed it now. If someone wants to get off the Trump train and get on the democracy train, you got to move over and give them a seat. If we don't give them a seat, they aren't coming over. Saying I told you so is not helpful. Saying this is your fault is not helpful. Saying you should have known is not helpful. We need every ally we can get. I see a lot of you out there saying, when will people wake up? Well, people are starting to wake up, believe it or not, especially after the tariffs. And when people wake up, you have to say, I'm so glad you woke up. You are welcome. Come sit beside me. If we treat them like crap, they're just going to go back to sleep. And the tariffs, as we are seeing over the last few days, have been a step too far for many Republicans and many Trump supporters. Noah Smith, one of my favorite economists and economic writers and bloggers, he said, I've resigned myself to the idea that the only way America is going to come to the broad realization that broad-based tariffs are a bad idea is to experience the negative consequences firsthand, i.e., to touch the proverbial hot stove. And he went on to predict, he wrote this the day of the tariffs, and he went on to predict that we would see people break from Trump, and his prediction is starting to come true. So Jim Cramer, the rather flamboyant TV personality and financial analyst, he said, I feel like a sucker. Richard Hanania is a conservative author, writer, podcaster. And in fact, he had written several op-eds in late 2024 explaining why he was voting for Trump and why he thought it was so important to vote for Trump. So just yesterday, he said, voting for Trump was a mistake. I thought we'd get a repeat of the first administration, but we didn't. The signs were there. I just did not take my own ideas of the awful elements of MAGA seriously enough. In other words, it sounds to me like he's saying his gut told him there was something off, and now he's wishing he'd listened to his gut. Senator Ted Cruz, I know what some of you were thinking. Again, you got to make room for allies. We need everyone we can get. Now, Ted Cruz is not saying Trump is a mistake. He's not saying get rid of Trump, but he is breaking with Trump on the tariffs. And this is actually a big deal. I'm seeing a lot of Republican cheerleaders reflexively defending that what the White House is doing, but these actions could hurt jobs and could hurt America. If we're in a scenario 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 90 days from now, with massive American tariffs and massive tariffs on American goods in every other country on earth, that is a terrible outcome. I agree with Ted Cruz. I imagine many of you agree with him too. Now, this was the first quote I saw from Senate Republicans, and I thought this might open the floodgates. And just since I put these slides together yesterday, it looks like it has opened the floodgates. Senate Republicans are rebelling against the tariffs in larger numbers, including people like Ron Johnson, Bill Cassidy, and John Kennedy, some of the most conservative, ardent Trump supporters, people like Ted Cruz, who have shown no daylight between themselves and Trump, who have been terrified of criticizing Trump on anything for 8 years. The tariffs made the stove too hot for them. And look, with these folks, I know you wish they'd come over sooner. I know you wish they'd woken up sooner, but they finally touched the hot stove and pulled back, and they were realizing that there's a problem. So you got to allow them that space. If you don't give them that space, they will go right back to Trump. And speaking of that, we're going to end today on a quote from Adam Kinzinger. A lot of you are familiar with him. He was one of the few Republicans who voted to impeach Trump, served on the January 6th committee. He's a combat veteran, former Republican member of Congress. So here's the quote we'll leave you with today. For people who admit that they were wrong, give them grace. We need this. It would feel very good to dunk on people who were wrong, but we all have been in the position where we've had to come to Jesus. And isn't he right? I've been wrong before. And when I was wrong, I was so happy to find a community of people who welcomed me with compassion. Have you been wrong before? We've all been wrong before, and we've all needed that grace when we've had that come to Jesus moment. So for the people who are starting to jump off the Trump train, move over, give them a seat.